welcome back to our Golden 20s. My name is Teagan, and I'm joined with my co-host, Sadie.
Hello.
And on today's episode, it kind of goes hand in hand with last week's episode where we talked about kind of our favorite things that came out in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
But this one's a little deeper, maybe a little
more
darker.
personal.
Yeah,
A little darker.
And we're going to be kind of reflecting on our own personal journeys in 2021.
I was hoping you were going to say that word just to make
Journeys?
it really dramatic.
Yeah.
Our 2021 journeys.
Yeah,
Love
our
that.
personal growth journeys.
Yeah. And I feel like, it might be like, I feel like this year sucked for everybody and us included, you know,
Mhm.
like it's just kind of like second year of living in a pandemic. We thought we'd be over this by now. We
Yeah.
thought this year would be better. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like the moral of this, like, I don't think we're gonna hammer home how tough this year was and like how much it sucked.
Mhm.
But I think, I don't know, I always kind of take comfort when, this is gonna sound mean, but like when I hear that everybody's kind of in the same boat.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I hope that's kind of what this episode can bring, is like, we're gonna share some lessons we learned, you
Mhm.
know? Hopefully they don't resonate, because that might mean you learned them too the hard way or whatever, but like,
Yeah.
we're all kind of in the same boat, and now let's just reflect on what was 2021.
Yeah. So at the very beginning of this podcast, which we actually started in February,
Mm-hmm.
but we started it with talking about our goals, not only like for the podcast, but for our year. So do you want to share what your kind of thoughts were that you shared in that very first episode?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm somebody, like, the past few years, I always try to come up with a word or like an intention or just like a theme for my year. And I think I said this a few episodes ago, where like I encourage you to start thinking back on your year now, or like,
Mhm.
obviously now we're like near the end of the year, so it makes sense, but like I've been thinking about 2021 and then what I'm wanting out of 2022. So already I'm starting to think of what next year's word will be. And I thought of the 2021 word at the end of 2020, and what I came up with was 2021 was going to be my year of leveling up. And I think when I thought like of year of leveling up, I was
Mhm.
like, that's going to be so great. You know,
Mhm.
like it's going to be like striving for bigger and better. It's going to be so rewarding. I'm going to feel like I'm a boss ass bitch. I'm going to
Mhm.
feel just like I'm moving mountains. Like it's going to be great.
Mm.
That wasn't so much the case. Like it was 100% my year of leveling up. Like, and I can get into like kind of more specifics as to what I did achieve that I kind of had set out to do that kind of fell under that theme. But what I didn't really take into account was how leveling up is really, really challenging. It means,
Right.
you know, taking something like taking risks, I guess, because obviously to level up, you have to kind of leave behind what you're used to and what's normal to kind of take that next step. And sometimes that can be really scary.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be, just stepping outside of your comfort zone. And all in all, it was just an extremely challenging year. So that was kind of my theme. And just like high level, I guess, before we get into like specifics of like goals and whatnot, that kind of sums up my year.
Yeah. This was the first year where I kind of come up with, I guess, a phrase for my year.
Okay.
And I said that 2020 was the year of prioritizing myself.
Okay.
And 2021 was going to be the year of living my best life, which I don't think I can say I did. Well, no, I don't know why I'm saying think. I know it wasn't living my best life, or at least I hope that that's not my best
I
life.
hope it gets better.
Yeah. So like this year for me, I feel like was just such a roller coaster. Maybe like if
Yeah.
I'm reflecting back, it's like if a word summed it up, it was roller coaster.
Yeah.
And from January to June, I was crushing it. And I think I was living my best life. Like
okay.
there were still things to improve. Like, and in the moment I was still, setting goals. Like maybe I wasn't as like physically active as I wanted to be, or I don't know, little things like that. But for the most part, I just felt like huge improvements in my life. But June to the December, something's flipped and it's like gone down the drop of the roller coaster. And I just feel like I'm in the exact same place as I was in 2020.
Yeah.
Which maybe isn't literally true. Like, there are obviously like some things that changed, but yeah, I don't know. In June, it's like I went back to an old job I had in 2019. I fired my therapist, and I don't know if any of those are to blame for the downfall or if they're a result of the downfall. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like chicken and egg situation. Like, am I in this because of these changes, reverting back to who I was at that time in my life? Or,
because I don't think that they are the reason that I feel like I'm in a slump.
Yeah.
They were just, everything was happening all at the same time, I think. So it's kind of weird because part of the year I'm very proud of the progress I made, but then it's almost worse to see that you made the progress
and then
to go back
on it. Yeah. I think for me, like, the first half of the year was a little bit better than the last half for me too. Not to the point where I was like, wow, this is the best year ever. Like, I never felt that way about this year. But I think I also came into this year being like, okay, great, pandemic living, but eventually we'll get back to the office. Eventually things will get back to normal this year. We're going to get vaccinated. Everything will be fine. And I feel like it was around the summer when I got that email to be like, come clean out your desk because you're never going back to the office.
Yeah.
Like, there was this internal shift in me that was like, this is your life now.
Yeah.
And for me, it was super isolating. And like, if I don't go to the office, like, there's some days I don't leave my house. Like, you know, and it was kind of like this, I was holding on hope, like, all through 2020. 2020 didn't really count because nobody knew what was going on. 2021, I was still holding on to hope that I would return back to the person I was before the pandemic. I returned back to my life before the pandemic. And then halfway through the year, it was like, no, that's not going to happen. And I remember coming on the podcast and I was like preaching how, you know, this is a great opportunity. Like, it's like a fresh, clean slate. Like, you can be anybody you want to be on this other side of the podcast.
Right.
Or other side of the podcast. You know what I mean? Other side of the pandemic. Like, you don't need to be who you were. And like, that's so refreshing. But me preaching that was just me trying to convince myself of that because I was like trying to view it as a positive thing when I was really mourning kind of like my pre-pandemic life. So I think that was the shift for me. And then realizing, this is here to stay. Work from home is here to stay. And then just like being sad about it rather than actively trying to make the best of the shitty situation. Yeah.
For sure. Well, and I think that is also part of when things started to go like back downhill for me. Like, maybe this is just a seasonal thing in my life where it's like January, I find it easier to be motivated because that's like all you hear about are resolutions and, you know, join the gym and do X, Y, and Z.
Like, your whole social media feed is your cheerleaders being like, you got this. I got this. We got this.
And then it's like, along comes spring and it's like, okay, summer's around the corner. Let's go. And then it hits summer and it's like, you better make the most of this because things are. So then once it hits June, I start prioritizing like, well, I just need to have fun because this is the summer. And so I let some of my personal growth go, which is fine. But then it's like, along comes the fall and it's like, along comes the winter, which is worse. And so I don't know, maybe in a year's time I will have been on like the exact same journey and it's just how I live seasonally, but I don't know. It's a mystery.
And I feel like too, something worth noting is like, I feel like it's good to have these reflections and to think back on it. So when you do go through another year, you can be like, is it just seasonally? Like, you know, it's like having that self-awareness we're always talking about and then figuring out like, if it is seasonally, like, well, how can I fix that? Or like, how can I work on that? And how can I continue to grow? And, you know, I don't know. I think it's just good self-awareness to have. Even if it was a crappy year, like, obviously it's painful to sometimes like look back and like relive it by like writing down all the bad things and all the good things that happen. But it's like, I feel there's a lot of good that can come out of it too.
Well, and just speaking from like my experience on thinking back, it kind of feels nice because it feels like that's an old chapter. Now that it's like, I wrote it down and we're talking about it, it's over. And now it's like time to build that new chapter, the new year.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as it's like, ugh, that sucks, and it sucks to see progress slip, it's like, but that's the old me.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I know, like, I don't think I'd say, like, I love New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
I like setting yearly goals. To me, they're slightly different, but I'm somebody who needs closure to move on from things. Like,
Right.
I hold grudges. Like, I keep thinking about things long past
Right.
I need to. So I
Mhm.
feel like the end of year is the perfect time, like you're saying, to
Mhm.
just be like, all right, getting the closure.
Yeah.
Let's move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
100%. So speaking of yearly goals, Tag, did you set some yearly goals? What were they? How did you make out with them?
I did. So for Christmas last year, Tyrell had gifted me like a nice journal. So he was like, so you can do journaling and write your notes. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for real. And as I said, this was like before the podcast, and I never really like seriously sat down to write goals, like, or maybe I'd done like a resolution, or I'd done it 1 month and given it up.
Yeah.
And so this was like the very first page on my new journal.
Oh, that's the best feeling.
Yeah. Except now I'm reading these goals. I was like, these are the dumbest goals. Like, why?
Oh.
But it's like the first time you set them. How do you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So the first goal I wrote was that I wanted to lose 25 pounds, which is like just the most random number. I have no idea what my thought process was behind that.
Yeah, like it was just kind of a number you pulled out of.
So it was
nowhere.
like, okay, I want to lose weight. I'll pick 25.
Right.
So I couldn't even tell you if I reached that because I don't weigh myself very often. So I don't know why I thought this goal should be weight related. So I think if I was, say, to set a goal now, it would be like to work out the X amount of time, or you know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be pounds related, but that's what I wrote.
Okay.
So
yeah,
no idea if I achieved it, but go off me. And I wrote to read 5 books.
Okay.
Which was what I had read in 2020.
Okay.
So I was like,
good.
keep it
You're
consistent.
like, some of my goals have data behind them. Okay.
Yeah. And I wrote that I wanted to achieve my monthly Apple Watch challenges.
Okay.
Because I just gotten a watch in October, so I'd only done 2 months challenges, and I was very into that. And to try and like date my husband more, basically, which means to not feel like we're roommates, to feel like we're actually a couple, especially in lockdown, and to be more consistent with my skincare.
Okay.
So for listeners of the podcast, you probably know how all of these goals went, but we can reflect on that in a moment. But Sadie, do you want to share what your goals were back when you wrote them in 2020?
Yes. So it's kind of funny because like I've been setting goals for a long time.
Yeah.
And obviously now I'm like preaching it to people, set goals, whatever. So, and it's kind of funny that you're just starting to set goals. So you're like, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Mine, I maybe took like too far in like how I organized it and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But basically to kind of support my like year of leveling up, I had like different kind of sections I wanted to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm going to remember all of them. And then within each of them, I kind of had specific goals. So the first one, this is so cringy and I'm sorry guys, this is just who I am, but you already know this. The first one was just like advanced adulting. And that was like, I want to get my driver's license. I want to get a pet. You guys know probably what happened there, but we can again reflect on that in a minute. Another one was to establish healthy habits. So that was, making fitness like a regular part of my lifestyle, like regular exercise. Taking a daily vitamin was a really like one of the goals on my list. I don't really know why, but I was like, healthy people take vitamins and that'll be great. Eating like nourishing foods, like that sort of thing. I also had skincare in that bucket. So just like establishing healthy habits. I put work hard but play harder. So this was kind of, I wanted to quit freelancing.
Right.
And to get a promotion at my job. I put a salary number that I wanted to start making in the year. And then I also wrote that I wanted to create my own platform for myself. So, which is kind of funny. I know not everybody believes in manifesting, but I feel like I kind of manifested the podcast by writing that.
Yeah.
So just like little things like that, just like stop working all the time like I was when I was freelancing and actually have fun. And kind of within that too was to create some hobbies for myself where I wasn't just working all the time. So I wanted to learn about coffee and wine as a hobby. And then the last one, was there one more? Oh, and then the last one was to be a conscious consumer. And by this, it was I wanted to cut back on my waste because I'm somebody who meal plans like crazy. Yeah, I still throw out a lot of food.
Right.
And cut back on like plastic, cut back on consumption since I'm such a shopaholic. Like, and I wanted to support local businesses. I wanted like to support, you know, just like good businesses that values aligned with my own. So those were kind of like my pillars within leveling up. And then I kind of touched on some specific goals within there about, you know, getting a pet, my driver's license, promotion, creating a pod or platform, those sorts of things.
Okay. Love it.
So, do you want to talk about maybe tag what goals you did achieve from that list you just shared with us?
Yeah. Well, I will say that I read a lot more than 5 books.
That's good.
I read 27 books
God.
far. So I don't know. This was the one that was based in data. And it was still like bananas.
Yeah.
But it was like I just figured out a way of, I don't know. I made it work for me. I kind of had come to the understanding with myself that if I got to a point in a book that I wasn't enjoying it, it would be like, okay, I'm not reading that book anymore.
Right.
Because I used to find that I would be like slogging through a book, and especially if I bought it, because it's like, well, you spent $20 on this book, so you're going to read it. And it would end up on me just not reading anything.
Yeah. I know that feeling.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, girl,
you're
learn the lesson from me. Because I went from reading 5 books to reading 27. And I probably took 60 books out of the library.
Wow.
I even bought a couple that I haven't read yet. But it was like, if I'm not into it, and obviously like there are sort of rules I want to say about reading that. It's like you give the first 45 pages and see if you like it. Blah, blah, blah. But especially if it was a library book, if I read the first 10 pages and I was like, I hate this, I was like, nope, back to the library. Who cares? And then it's like, if I change my mind and want to try it, like that happened with Daisy Jones and the Six. I got it, read the first 10 pages, and I was like, nope, not reading it. And then I revisited it later in the year. But I feel like that, and maybe this is a lesson I should be applying to my goals this year, is to just like listen to myself.
Yeah.
Because it makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
So that's my rant about books.
But it's a good rant. You're like,
lessons.
I achieved this goal, and this is why. Because
and this is what I learned.
Set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I did do, I did improve my skincare, but it was something I let slip in the second half of the year.
Okay.
But I will say, like, I improved it over 2020. So even though it's not in a place where I want it, it was
way
still
more
an
consistent.
improvement.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. One thing that wasn't really, I didn't write it down as my goal, but I did create like a visualization board on Pinterest for the year.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
And there are a lot of images where when I pinned them, I probably wouldn't have been able to tell you why exactly I pinned them. But looking back, I was like, okay, this is what I wanted, and I succeeded. So it was stuff like making my house feel more like a home, cooking more, I don't know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was like pinning images of people just like friends sitting at a table drinking wine, or
that's exactly what we're doing right
now. But like stuff like that where it's like, I'm not going to write like, I want to have a friend over to drink wine, or like, I want to dance with my husband in the living room. Yeah. But then it's like stuff that I did create in the year. So that was good. And
I feel like you've talked about like enjoying those small moments.
Yeah.
And it's like small moments you maybe don't share with people, or like, you know, creating those small moments even.
Yes.
So I feel like those are all the things that you put on your Pinterest board. And
exactly. But as far as like my physical fitness, I feel like it wasn't really at the level where I wanted it to be. And I definitely did not prioritize healthy eating.
Mm.
And same with like, I don't know, like there were a lot of times, especially in the second half of the year, where it's like my priority had to be making sure I ate and showered
Yeah.
and could do my job,
Yeah.
not making sure I like got up and did skincare and then had a healthy
Yeah,
breakfast.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. It's like at some point you just, if you are shooting for the moon, you're not
Yeah.
going to do any of it. You know,
Yeah,
just take care of the
exactly.
basics, take that pressure off yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And
That
I was
makes
thinking
sense.
like when I'm at work and I do my job, it's like that's what I'm hired to do. That's what I'm paid for. But they're still like, wow, great job. You killed it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I should do that to myself. Where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so I didn't do my 10-step skincare routine, but I got up, showered, and did my job.
Yeah.
So it's like, why can't I be like, yeah, good job?
Yeah.
Where in my mind, it's like, well, yeah, of course you did, because that's what everyone does. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a whole separate issue. Yeah. How about you, Sadie?
Yeah. So I have kind of like a summary of the actual goals that I just talked about. So starting off with the things I did achieve, I did get a pet. You guys know that, my cat Cleo. And honestly, guys, I just got her in August, but she's really the light of my life.
Yeah.
Like she just like makes me laugh. She gives me like a sense of responsibility. And it's to the point I just went to Montreal and I felt like so bad leaving her. Like I was like, how do people do this with children?
I
Because
know.
like I feel bad leaving my cat. But anyways, that was a big goal for my advanced adulting. I also got that promotion I was talking about. Plus, on top of that, I changed jobs. So I ended up surpassing that salary goal I had set for myself by like $10,000, which was really great. So I feel like I killed it on the job front. However, that was literally the lowest I was all year mental health wise, was choosing to leave my job or to stay. And also getting a pet. Like when I first got Cleo, I was like, well, it just took time for us to get used to each other, you know? So like I was like, oh my God, she hates me, having breakdowns about that. Oh my God, we're never going to be bonded. You know, like these things were both really great. They were on my goals, but they definitely weren't easy. I also did give up freelancing, which I'm so thankful. And now, like I said, we have the podcast. So I'm channeling, you know, weeknight energy after work into the podcast, which has been a lot of fun. And this has kind of become my platform I was talking about. So, yeah. And then for the healthy habits piece, I did start developing healthy habits. I think this is something that's really hard to say I achieved it, exactly like you were saying, Teagan. Like sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. Like you can't just check that off. I feel like I did lots of cooking at home, was eating healthy food. I was pretty consistent with my water intake. That does not mean I drank, you know, 4 water bottles every single day, but I feel pretty good about what I was doing. I feel really good about my skincare routine. This is not one of my yearly goals and so stupid, but I reached Sephora Rouge this year, which I felt was an accomplishment of the year. But it goes hand in hand with my dedication to my skincare routine. And I went in spurts with the daily vitamin idea. So I talked about like the daily vitamin subscription I was using for a while called Care Of. I was a huge fan of that. So like there were bits and pieces in there that I definitely did achieve, but like I said, that's something that's ongoing and definitely going to continue into 2022. Some things I didn't achieve that were actual goals was getting my driver's license. Don't ask me why. I have zero reason. I just didn't do it. Actually, I can tell you the reason. And it goes back to what you're saying about reading a book. I was like, I need to read this manual, you know, because I don't know the laws. I don't know how many demerit points you lose when you get pulled over for this reason. Like, I don't know. But I dread like studying. I dread writing notes. Like, that's why I just never did it. And I said to my mom at one point, I was like, I'll just go wing it. Because at this point, if I have to study this whole freaking book, I'm never going to be ready. And I passed it once when I was 16. But anyways, rant over about the driver's license. I did not do that. I also didn't learn about coffee or wine. I really didn't have any new hobbies this year when I really wanted to. And the hobbies I did have, like pre-pandemic, I didn't really continue practicing this year. So I also think that contributed to like poor mental health and whatnot, but definitely something I'm like thinking about moving into the new year. And I wasn't as conscious of a consumer as I had hoped to be. I feel like I made huge strides on the whole waste side when it comes to like garbage. Like I literally read
Mm-hmm.
up on properly composting in the city of Toronto, properly recycling. And like I've been doing that. I've also really cut down on my food waste. I only take out my garbage every 2 weeks instead of once a week, like things like that. But when it comes to the whole like shopping at stores and businesses where their values align with mine, I really didn't do as much there as I had hoped. So not like total failure, but definitely didn't achieve all my goals either. Just other little things I was like, when I was just thinking back on the year, I also think if you have these big goals, great, but I feel like sometimes those are harder to like achieve, and you can get really like down on yourself if you don't achieve them. So think of all the other little accomplishments you maybe achieved, or the small wins. For me, that was keeping my houseplants alive. Like usually I get them for the summer, put them on the balcony and throw them out when I clean up the balcony for the season, but I moved all of them inside. Like they're still thriving and life is good. So that was a little win that I was like, thinking back on it, I'm so proud of myself. I also reached my reading goal of 12 books a month. I'm working on my 13th one right now, so I'm like, girl, yes, you go. I did the 4-week personal training program with Sarah, who was on the podcast. Like that was not something I had set a goal of doing, but I'm really happy I did it. I was consistent with like my saving contributions to my RRSP and TFSA. And then also just being consistent with the podcast too. Like everything, even freelancing. I just dreamed of freelancing for so long. Then I started doing it and I was like, no, this isn't for me. Quit doing it. Like, anything. So I'm really proud of actually doing this basically a whole year later. We're still here recording together. So
crazy.
Yeah. So those are kind of my wins, the goals I did and did not achieve.
That's fine. Well, and I feel like, I don't know, it's almost harder to see them like back to back when it's like, if you just visualize how your life is now and then think of like, what would Sadie at 15 looking at your life think? And it'd be like, it wouldn't be like, oh, you didn't get your license. They'd be like, holy shit, you live in Toronto. You kept your plants alive. I can't even keep my room clean. Like stuff like that.
Oh my God, 15 Sadie. 15-year-old
It's
Sadie,
like we went to school together.
Oh man, that's so funny. That's so true. And also I am somebody who's constantly striving for the next thing, where when I do take a goal off the list, like I never am like, yes, you go girl. Like I'm just like, Kate, next one. Like Kate, next one. And that's a huge problem, where I only really celebrate my wins like once a month or once a year. I mean, sorry. So yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying.
What's interesting is that I feel like we're both hard on ourselves, but in different ways. Like you're hard on yourself because you're like, I don't know, or maybe it's the same way, but it's like you just said, okay, done that, on to the next thing. Whereas it's like I'm hard on myself because in my mind, it's like any success is a fluke, where any failure is like the real me. So it's like, I don't know, it's just very interesting that we have the same problem, but we're coming at it from like different ways. I think.
And I think the commonality here, like not to get too deep, is like we're literally standing in our own ways. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're like standing in your way because you're like, no, success, I don't deserve this. And I'm like, success, like, well, I can do better. Like it's like, I don't know, literally a made up story in our own heads that we're like not enjoying life. Like,
it's like, why don't we just relax? And
because we are killing it. Like, that was actually one of the other things I was saying. One of my accomplishments like this year was 5 years of my apartment. Like you said, that was literally my dream when I was in high school, was just to live in the city, to work in the fashion industry, and that's it. Like, never mind, like nobody,
the extra things that
exactly. I didn't think I'd have a podcast, but here we are, like, I don't know. Yeah, that's so true.
So kind of in the same vein as that, trying to focus on the positives, the good things that happen, because there was a lot of good things that happened this year. As much as it's like, it sucks because COVID or other things outside of COVID, it's still like there was a lot of good stuff that went down.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like there's always like yes, there's your goals, whatever. And I feel like some people don't believe in goals because it kind of, if you're someone who just likes to have fun and like be spontaneous, you're like, I hate goals, you know?
Yeah.
But for me, I find like a good balance between like having fun and also striving for something. I feel like one of my biggest highlights from this year is literally the most basic thing, but just spending so much time with family. In 2020, I really didn't. Like, I spent time with my parents and that was it.
Yeah.
My sisters live in a different province, so they didn't really come home much. I didn't see my grandparents, well, I guess I did see my grandparents last year more than this year, but you know, just like family time was huge this year, and it was like a highlight for me. Like, my sister bought a house, I got to see it. Like, we threw a birthday party there. I spent time with my parents still in Muskoka area, spent 2 weekends with my sister in Montreal. Like, it was so good. My cousin came to the city. Like, it was so nice to spend time with family without being like, I'm afraid if I get you sick, you're gonna die. Like, know? So that was one of my highlights, along with obviously adopting my cat Cleo. That falls under
new
family time. Yeah.
Your daughter.
Yeah. What would you say was your like number one highlight from the year?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, what's funny is that looking back on the year, all of my favorite memories are like what we were saying earlier. Like, they're like the small
simple things.
Yeah. And
like family time.
Yeah. Things like you can't even plan, or like, I don't know.
I think like if you're really planning and like looking forward to something, you're just like putting a lot of pressure on yourself for it to be amazing.
Right.
Sometimes when it happens, especially during the pandemic where you're not doing much and you're looking forward to something, and if it doesn't go exactly as you had imagined it to go, it's easy to be disappointed. Where those small, simple things, you're like, I have zero hopes for this. Like, I'm just living life, and it ends up being like amazing.
Yes.
So I get that.
Or it's the best when it's just like a normal day that then turns magical.
Yes.
Then you're like, what the heck? How did that even happen?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I did celebrate 1 year of marriage, which is crazy. And
that is crazy.
Maybe this is jinxing myself, but like, it wasn't even hard. Like, it was like we just kept living our lives, and it was great.
I think that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Like, if it was
we'll check in
hard,
next year, and it'll be like, so this year we had to work through. Yeah. But I don't know. It was very nice. And we obviously, like, we had our wedding reception, which was also very nice. A little stressful, definitely towards the end of the year. But yeah, I feel like that deserves a shout out.
Yeah. I think going back to those small, simple things, this is so dumb, but one of my highlights from this year, and obviously if you guys are from Toronto, you don't want me to mention this, but if you're not, like, Toronto had the craziest lockdowns. Like, I feel like we were locked down till the summer. So supporting your local restaurants was such a huge thing. And there's this one restaurant right down the street from me that I was like, I would be devastated if this place closes. So every Friday night I ordered dinner from them, and I think they knew. Actually, I just got an Uber Eats notification being like, you were in their top 5% of their most loyal customers.
Classic.
Which I felt really proud of. But anyways, I think they knew I was like reoccurring because they'd like throw free shit in all the time. Like, usually it was free cookies, but every now and then it was a free brownie with ice cream, and I was like, yes, like, this is so good. But those Friday nights, like, that Friday night tradition was one of my favorites. And it would just be like, I'd watch a movie. I would sometimes take a bath right after. Like, I would drink wine, literally just at home by myself. But it was just like something I look forward to. And it was the most simplest night. Sometimes it would be just blasting Taylor Swift, dancing around my apartment, like, after eating dinner. Like, I don't know. It was just like something I feel like I'll look back on this year and be like, man, those simple Friday nights were so good. I loved them.
Yeah, I had a couple moments like that. Like, a lot of them are revolving around like finally having a backyard. But there were some nights, like I remember May 2-4, we were like, are we going to go up to a cottage? And then we didn't end up doing it. And my brother and I, we were like, F it. We don't need a cottage. We have a backyard. Yeah. And so we got a sprinkler. And we set up our lawn chairs so that the sprinkler was like under our butts. And we just sat in our lawn chairs, and this cover band from Toronto called Dwayne Gretzky was
the best.
Yeah. Okay. I have a whole separate Dwayne Gretzky story, but maybe I'll get into that after. So they were doing a live stream where they were playing 99 songs to raise money for Toronto food banks. So we're like, we're going to sit in these lawn chairs, we're going to drink, and we're going to listen to Dwayne Gretzky. And it was just like such a fun day. I got so sunburnt.
That's a sign of a good day.
Yeah. But it was just like, this was so perfect. Like going to a cottage couldn't have been as good as this day was. And there were like a couple moments like that. Like I remember, I think it was the day of our first vaccinations.
Okay.
Maybe it was either the first or the second, but it was definitely a day that we went to get vaccinated because it was like the Hunger Games in Toronto to get vaccinations. The American listeners are probably like, what are you talking about? But it was intense.
Yeah, it was.
And so we had finally gotten our reservations, and it was like for a day after we went. And it was right at the beginning of the summer. And my mom had bought us champagne to celebrate. And it was another where like me and my brother sat in the backyard and we popped champagne. And we were listening to Big Booty Mixes for some reason. For some reason, aka you listen to that all the time, so I'm not surprised.
And
I was like, we're just putting this on, so get ready. But then we just talked about like all the things we wanted to do in the summer. And we were like, and it's now possible because we got vaxxed, not knowing what was coming. But
I still love that.
Yeah. So it was just like a full day. We probably got sunburnt again, sat in the same chairs. But it was just like one of those things where it's like, now when I think of this year, I think that's what I'll be thinking of, like moments like that.
Yeah, I love that. Kind of similar for me. I obviously don't have a backyard, but my best friend and I did lots of just like day trips. Like we went to Wasaga Beach one day. We went to Prince Edward County. We did that like Christmas road trip I was talking about in my winter bucket list. Like I'm somebody obviously who loves to travel. I feel like you guys know that about me already. So I'm like, miss that feeling of getting on a flight, going somewhere totally new.
Right.
And we literally went like within the GTA, like not that far from the city.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, these are so great. And we always have the best days when we go out. Like we get the last parking spot in an insanely parked, like crazy parking lot. Like, you know, we get the last table at this really busy brunch place. Like we always have the best luck. So all of those days, so simple, but they were also some of my favorite memories from this year.
Yeah, I have another memory that's kind of in the same vein, whereas my like house had a Hawaii night.
Oh yeah.
Just because we were missing travel, and like Hawaii is one of our favorite places, and we were like, F it, we're having a Hawaii night, so get ready. And it was like I bought all these like insane cocktail ingredients so I could make Hawaiian cocktails, and we did like Hawaiian food and movies and music and outfits. And it was so stupid because it's just the three of us. But it was like we just had the best time.
Yeah, exactly. Love a good theme party.
Yep, exactly. And it was just like one of those nights Tyrell accidentally got like too drunk on Mai Tais, and that was hilarious. And
I love that.
Yeah, it was just a good day.
Yeah. I think the last like highlight for me of this year was meeting and chatting with people we had on the podcast as guests. Literally every guest we've had on the podcast I am obsessed with to this day. Like, I don't know, I obviously when you're interviewing them you're like, yes, you are my new best friend.
Yeah.
But I honestly am obsessed with all of them. I obviously did that 4-week program with Sarah that I was talking to you guys about. I had my birth chart reading done by Taddy, who was an astrologer on like early podcast days. She was our first guest, actually.
Yeah, it was like episode 6 or something, I feel.
And like both of them I've kept in contact with. Like I just like follow them on social, support them, like love all of their content. The birth chart reading I think was another highlight for me this year. Like it happened right after or maybe right before we had her on the podcast, so months ago. Yeah. But it was just so good. And yeah, all of the podcast guests, I'm like, I just feel really like, I don't know, fortunate, I guess, to like have a reason to like kind of reach out to these people and like pick their brains, talk to them. So that was a huge highlight apart from just like having the podcast, obviously, like being proud of that, but networking with cool people has been peak 2021.
Yeah, well, and I feel like, I don't know, it was a good year. Like if I think about the parts of my life, there were like major positives in all of them. like work, because I'm considering podcasts like in the bucket
Work.
of work.
Yeah.
And obviously starting the podcast, like I had my first work trip, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
That if someone were to be like, how was your work year in 2021? I'd be like, ugh, not good. But then it's like, thinking about it, actually,
Yeah.
it was kind of good, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perspective, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it's just natural to overlook the good and just focus on the bad, because like the bad is what we like obsess over, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it is important to just be like, no, write down all the good things. Like
Yes.
they are there, you know? If you have to like scour and like just like really think about it, do it, because they are there even in a really shitty year.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is something, I don't know, like something that we do at my work, which maybe people think is cringy, is we say every day one thing we're grateful for.
Okay.
And it's just something that our boss is very passionate about. She believes like gratitude is like the number one thing you should be thinking about at all times. And so it's something that you're like, ugh, I don't want it. Like it's 9 a.m. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
But I do notice a like mental shift.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'll be on a walk and I'll think, oh, tomorrow I should say I'm grateful for this tree, or, you know, something stupid. But it's like that thought wouldn't have occurred to me to even notice this.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking I'm grateful for it. And I feel like you can apply that to like this whole year, that if all you're focusing on is like, well, I need to keep stepping it up, I need to self-improve, or if all you're focusing on is, well, this is a terrible year because it was a pandemic, it's like that's all you see. But when you shift your perspective to be like, well, I'm going to come up with one thing I'm grateful for, or I'm going to come up with 3 things a week that, you know, I killed it at. It's like you start to rewire your brain.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
Awesome. So going into kind of some lessons learned,
Oh,
rewiring your brain. I think we've already kind of shared some lessons we learned this year, especially as they're like tied to our theme of the year, or like that one word that we had set for the year.
Yeah.
My first one is just how growth is so scary and it's uncomfortable. But in order to actually level up, you have to take risks.
Yeah.
And I already kind of explained all that at the beginning of this episode, but that was my number one thing, because I'm somebody, like I said, who is always striving for bigger and better. Yet I'm like, why is this so uncomfortable? Like, why does this feel so new? Because I'm also someone who dreads doing things for the first time and being bad at things.
Right.
So, you know, like they don't go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So it was uncomfortable territory for me all year long. And it, like, obviously doing something for the first time, or growth in any case, is scary, but I just didn't think of that when I was like, I want to level up and improve and, you know, take all these new steps.
Yeah. And it's like, that's not the story that we're ever told, I feel like. It's not like I wanted to start my own podcast, so I did it, and for a year I had 20 listeners. Or, you know, like you hear stories of like Lizzo appeared overnight. And it's like, well, when you look into it, Lizzo didn't appear overnight. She was grinding away for 10 years and there were failures and heartache, but it's like, that's not the story we're ever told. So it's like, that's not what we expect from ourselves, when it's like, realistically, growth in any way is intense.
100%.
Even if it's good.
And even something as simple as like going back to the whole cat example.
Like
I was saying how when I first got Cleo, I was like, oh my God, we're never going to be as bonded like as my sisters and their cats. And I was saying this to my sister, and she's like, I literally cried the first night we got our cats, being like, oh my God, we made a mistake. Like they hate us. We hate them. Like, and I was like, what? I never knew that. Like, you love your cats so much. Like, and this is my sister who I tell everything to. She tells everything to me. Like, so true.
Yeah. I mean, some of the lessons I feel like I learned, well, I did a lot of like self-reflecting, obviously, and having a therapist is part of that. So it's like I learned about how I don't expect success for myself. I expect failure, but kind of going like learning from that learning is that I think I need to set more realistic goals for myself. Say not to lose 25 pounds, because that's very random, but making them like actual realistic, actionable items that are actually in line with how I want my life to look. Because just saying I want to lose 25 pounds, like, hell yeah, that sounds sick. But then it's like, okay, how are you going to do that? Do you want to be the person who's on a diet? Do you want to be a person who spends an hour a day working out?
Yeah.
Is that what your actual values are? Well, no.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of a major learning, but I do think that comes with the practice of goal setting and understanding that just like writing something down isn't going to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you write something down on January 1st doesn't actually mean that that's what you want.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with manifesting that people get kind of bugged out about, is like, just because you write it down doesn't mean it's going to happen without effort. Like,
yeah.
And that's why I'm like, starting a year with yearly goals is great, but that's why I then set monthly goals. So I'm like constantly doing the small things that add up to the big things, or I'm constantly reflecting back on those yearly goals to be like, well, what out of that list can I achieve this month? You know, like, you need an action plan to get there. It, like, manifesting does work as long as you're putting in the work.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why I think like you were saying, having a plan is more important than setting the goal.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I could set a goal that I want to be a supermodel.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, hell yeah, go off. But then it's like, okay, but then what's the actual plan to get there?
Yeah.
Writing it down means nothing.
Yeah. Girl, you need to read Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Literally
I keep seeing it on TikTok, and TikTok knows me.
Within the first like few pages, it's like, you're a goal setter? Great. There's more to life than setting goals.
Yeah.
It's all about, those like habits, how you get there. And I was like, obviously me being me, I was like, yeah, I am goal setter. Like, I'm taking
Pardon?
this personally. And I love the book. I was like, this is a really good perspective.
Yeah.
But I think, that's a good learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you said, it's good just like self-awareness to have. And it's back to what I was saying. Like, it was your first time setting goals.
Yeah.
It's okay that you didn't do it perfectly. You know, like,
yeah,
try again for next year and whatever. Yeah. Kind of going back to like this whole I'm a failure mindset. I think one of the biggest things I learned this year, I'm going to get like really personal for a minute, but prior to the pandemic, I feel like I was somebody that was like, I'm such a strong person. I got this. Like, that was just what I was saying to myself in my head at all times. If I was doing something that was really challenging, I was like, it's okay. You got this. Like, you're a strong person. You got this. The world was crumbling around me, and I was like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, you'll get through this.
Yeah.
You got this. This year was obviously like very challenging, where that mindset kind of like shifted, and I came through being like, if I'm a strong person, why don't I got this? And like,
right.
I'm now all of a sudden I'm a weak person, you know? And I had to really kind of chat this out with one of my sisters, being like, having weak moments doesn't make you a weak person.
Yeah.
And kind of going back to what you were saying about like, it's how you view it and your mindset. I really shifted my mindset to be like, actually getting through moments of weakness shows you're a strong person.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what I did. You know, like, I still did continue to get up and shower and do the basics, even though I wasn't feeling like it. So I feel like that was a big lesson learned, is having weak moments doesn't make you a weak person.
Yeah.
Even though it's so basic, but that was just a little motto I kept coming back to.
Yeah. I feel like we, as maybe just you and me, but I'm hoping other people, I feel like it's so easy to be like hard on yourself. And it's like you were saying, like, well, you'll get through this because you always have, and that's who you are.
Yeah.
But then it's like, are you really honoring who you are on the inside?
Yeah.
Like, because maybe you aren't just this one thing you've decided you are.
Yeah.
Or like, something that I help sometimes is thinking of like myself as like a little kid inside like me as a big kid body. So it's like, would you say to like little Sadie, you're a strong person, you'll get through this?
Yeah.
Like, of course not.
Yeah.
So then it's like, but then why do you talk to yourself when that's who's inside you?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And that actually kind of goes perfectly to my next point, is the realization. This is so obvious, but I really took me all year to learn it, that you can't permanently achieve traits and characteristics that make you you. You have to constantly be working on them. So for me, you know, if my confidence was part of what made me a strong person, and this year I wasn't very confident at all, you know, you guys have heard me talk about my skin struggles and how that like
Mm-hmm.
really impacted my confidence and all this random shit. But like, yeah, like you have to practice being a confident person. You can't just be like, okay, I put in the work in my first 25 years of life. I've unlocked, like, it's not a video game. Like, okay, I've unlocked this like skill, you know? And same with intuition. That was another thing. I was always like, I have really great intuition. I have strong intuition.
Right.
But when it came time to make a career change, I was like, what the hell? I don't know what to do. Like, I don't have intuition right now. And it's because I hadn't been practicing it all year. Like, I don't know. It's really hard to explain, but I feel just the concept of you need to work at who you want to be. Like that. I guess in the pandemic, you had to work even harder. You're like removed from, you know, like the system of going to work or whatever that might help you just naturally be that person. You have to like actually work. And
well, and it's like how I was saying, the first half of the year, it's like I killed it with my skincare. Like I did my skincare every single day. I was journaling. I was eating healthy pork, and then it stopped. And it's like, oh, but I journaled for 6 months. And it's like, well, that doesn't mean anything if you never ever journal again. Or it's the same, like if we did the podcast for 6 months and then it was over and we never did an episode, would I be like, I'm a podcaster?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so true.
I mean, I think kind of the last, I don't know, lessons I learned was, I think this is kind of for like creating goals going forward. So maybe these are more like lessons about goal setting. But I think it's that I need to give myself the space to listen to myself like I did with my book goal, because that was where I saw the most success. So I can't set goals that are like, you're not going to eat carbs. It'll be like, I set a goal that's like, I need to listen to what my body wants to eat more. That kind of thing, which I think makes it harder to track the goals, which was why I was avoiding things like that, because it kind of goes against the rules of goal setting that you hear. But I don't know. That was one thing. And I also feel like I saw the most success in goals that I was visualizing on my vision board. So I want to do that again this year. And I want to do something where when I'm writing my monthly goals, I revisit my vision board. So that it's not like I'm getting lost and like, okay, well, I made my goal that I'm going to lose 5 pounds and then I did. And then it's like I lose the reason I made that goal in the first place.
And I think too, like I know some people do seasonal vision boards. I feel like maybe that could help you through your seasonal. Is it a seasonal slump or is this just I love that idea. And I think in the new year we will have an episode where, you know, we're kind of, I always say this loosely, but like coaching you through setting goals, you know, what makes kind of a resolution and goal different, like things to think about. So we'll definitely be here for each other, obviously, but also here for you as a listener as we start thinking about, you know, what are some goals for 2022 or how can we set ourselves up for success. But all of that is to come. I think you really need to, though, do that reflection piece first, like we just did, in order to know what you actually want and what's achievable for you moving forward. Like you have to, it's one of those cliches, you got to know where you've been to know where you're going kind of thing. So
I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, that is all we have for you guys today. We will be back next week, and we're actually going to do a journal with us next week to guide you through your own 2021 reflection. So come with your journals or just scrap piece of paper and a pen, and we're going to do a reflection together, which will be really great. We also know this episode is dropping right before Christmas, so we just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody, and we hope everyone has a warm, safe, loving Christmas, and we will talk to you guys next week.